Welcome to a very special conversation. With me here is the former Tibetan Prime Minister and who's now, of course, a professor at Harvard Law School, Mr. Lobsang Sangay, with whom I will discuss everything related to Trump's policy on China, Taiwan, Tibet, and, of course, India as well. Thank you so much, sir, for speaking to me.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
We are speaking on a day when Prime Minister Modi is meeting President Trump. Everything is set to be on the agenda, but the one thing I think that's going to be really important is Donald Trump's China policy. It will impact India, it will impact the world as well. Let me first start by asking you, what do you think about Donald Trump's position and policy on China, and how much do you think it will be different from his predecessors?
When Trump was president the first time, we lobbied to pass a law called Tibetan Policy Support Act of 2020, which he signed, based on which we got all the things that we needed, including funding, opening a consulate in Lhasa, on the issue of reincarnation, environmental issue of Tibet. So it's a law in America to support Tibet, which President Trump signed it. So second time, he has come back. Now he's, bound or obligated by the law he has signed. So that way, I think his support for Tibet will continue. As far as China is concerned, it looks intuitively, if you listen to him, he keeps saying China and tariff, and then it looks like that China policy will continue. But then the Secretary of State, Rubio, has been a friend of Tibet. The National Security Advisor, Deputy National Security Advisor, all are very familiar about China and has been hawkish on China.
Hawks,
yes, hawkish on China, and also sympathetic and supportive of Tibet. So that way, I think the first Trump and the second Trump administration will be quite similar on the issue of China and Tibet.
I'm going to come to Taiwan in just a bit because there could be some differences in terms of how Trump may approach Taiwan. But on the issue of Tibet, the other thing I want to ask is that essentially Tibet is not just a China issue. It's an India-China issue at some level, right? I mean, because if you think about it, India doesn't share a boundary with China. It shares a boundary with Tibet.
Yes.
How do you see this entire relationship evolving, given the fact that China has also been making its expansionist ambitions very clear, and President Trump has a different way of approaching it? How do you see that likely to impact?
So I'm glad to hear that now even in the Indian media, they recognize that border of India was with Tibet, not with China. So from all the way from Kashmir, Ladakh, all the Arunachal Pradesh, and then border skirmishes is going on from Galwan, Doklam, Arunachal Pradesh, right? So it's like 2,500, kilometers long border. Yeah. So it's, in fact, much is talked about Taiwan, which we'll discuss later, as you said. But, India-Tibet border, but now occupied by China, has been quite tense.
Yeah.
Right? So geopolitically, it's very, very important. In that sense, I think America trying to, win over or ally with India, and India also seeing the looming threat of China and its expansionist design, right? Aligning with America on geopolitical issues will be mutually beneficial, because as you know, in 50s Mao Zedong said, let's occupy Tibet. Tibet is the palm, and then let's go after five fingers. Ladakh, the Sikkim, Bhutan, Arunachal, and Himachal. So that's an expansionist policy still very much active, and India should be aware, and where India and America could come together.
What about the dam building exercises that China has really stepped up on right now, that the Brahmaputra being the latest? How do you see that impacting? Because there are some experts who feel that the future could be, geopolitics could be around water, especially in this region.
That's a very serious issue. Recently, when there was a news that on Doklam, recently when there was a news about Galwan, when Indian and Chinese troops were pulling each other, there was some kind of a lull. Yeah. I was expecting some other, major news from Chinese side, and then the building of the dam, right, on Brahmaputra came about soon thereafter. So when they give you, they always take 2 steps forward, and 1 step back, and it's a concession. And when they give you something, they always take something from you. So it looks like that. They have already built 4 dams on Brahmaputra River. They are planning to have a dozen. And one, the largest one, bigger than dam over Yangtze River, right?
Yes.
Largest
the
dam.
3 gorges, yeah.
Yes. So with that, it's a major, threat. It should be a serious issue for India for many reasons. Brahmaputra is a lifeline for northeast of India and Bangladesh. Right? And once you have a dam, you control the flow of water. Yeah. So if farmers, don't get water, at the time when they are planting things, and then if they're delayed by even a few weeks, that could affect agriculture. And people downstream will affect the fishery, So it's a serious issue. And then during war, you can flood all the highways and railway lines and essentially cut off, all the sister states of Northeast from rest of, India. So that's a very serious issue. Now, what is more serious is that Tibet, we don't need any extra energy because we have surplus of energy. Mm-hmm. We don't need any more dam. There are around 400 dams, right? Almost like 20 plus dams for every river. But they keep building these dams to generate hydropower for China's, economy and Chinese companies.
Okay. Let me then, final question on Tibet, which is around Dalai Lama. The next Dalai Lama, China has also said that it wants a say in how the next Dalai Lama would be chosen, essentially trying to dictate the representation of the Tibetan people. How important do you think that will be in the larger, and it's also not just about Tibet and China, as I go back to saying, it's about India, China as well. Yes. India has been, it has supported the Tibetan cause. There is a very large Tibetan people who are in India. If China insists on the next Dalai Lama to be chosen by it or have a say on it, how much will that impact?
It affects India very seriously in the sense, whole of Himalayan belt, right? Yes. All the way from Ladakh to Himachal to Nepal, Bhutan, Arunachal, they by and large follow Buddhism and by and large regard Dalai Lama as a spiritual teacher.
Yes.
Now up north is Tibet. Yeah. Up north is Inner Mongolia, north of Tibet. And north of Inner Mongolia is Outer Mongolia. And up north is Buret and Tuba, all the way to Russia. So you territorially, if you look, right, from all the way to Himalaya, all the way to Russia, they follow Buddhism, they follow Dalai Lama as their spiritual leader. So it has a major geopolitical ramification. Now, Chinese government is essentially saying, look at the audacity. It's not the Dalai Lama, right, His Holiness, but rather we will decide his reincarnation. Yeah. His Holiness Dalai Lama has no right to decide on his reincarnation, but we will decide. From a spiritual point of view, political, common sense point of view, it's just absurd. Yes. But that's their audacity, that's what they're trying to sell. But His Holiness has said it very clearly, that he will decide, where and when to be born. And then he has also said it very clearly, if Tibet issue is not resolved, he will be born outside. And on that also, again here, the Trump administration is relevant. In the Tibetan Policy and Support Act, it clearly says that America supports the decision of the Dalai Lama and Tibetan followers, and no government, particularly Chinese government, cannot interfere. If any official interferes in the selection of the next Dalai Lama, he or she will be penalized or sanctioned by the American government. So that way, I think, it is in the interest of India, because there's a large followers of Dalai Lama.
Could there be a situation where, China also appoints his Dalai Lama, its version of Dalai Lama? And
they will certainly do that.
Yeah, so there could be 2 representations, spiritual heads.
You can't say 2.
No, they will have theirs is what I'm saying. And
one original, one fake, right? So they want to build a fake one. So no one will, bother about the fake one because, spirituality, it's something personal, it's something within you. No one can force you or buy you, Even with a gun, on your head, you can't say now, you should follow my God. You can't force anyone. So that way, I think 6 million Tibetans and all those Buddhists will say, it is reincarnation of Dalai Lama. It is for him to decide.
Yes.
And whatever he decides, and people will follow.
Which now brings me to ask you about Taiwan. Let me, shift gears from Tibet to Taiwan, which is that on Taiwan, do you think that there could be a different, you're also going to be there, do you think there's going to be a different policy in America now towards Taiwan? Because President Trump is very clear that, if you want American security, you've got to pay for it. Whether it's Japan, whether it's the NATO, whether it's Taiwan, not an exception. How will that change the dynamics?
I might have a longish kind of answer. Please bear with me, because I also went to Ukraine, right?
And we'll come to Ukraine.
Yeah. So in Ukraine, what I saw, because often we say, right, West is not doing enough for Ukraine to win the war. But China is supporting Russia. But I also noticed that China is not doing enough for Russia to win the war. Why? Because they want to prolong the war. If you prolong the war, you weaken Russia. Economically, they're weak. They're using all the arsenals, ammunitions, right? And then you weaken Ukraine. You weaken NATO and Europe. And you weaken America, right? So even all the arsenals, armed ammunitions are getting depleted, right? So that way, China is killing 4 birds with one stone: Russia, Ukraine, Europe, America. And also could be 5th bird, because by 2027, because it's like, commander of the Pacific, command of America, and CIA director all have said by 2027, China will surpass America's naval capacity, at least in quantity, in number, right? Then 2027 could be a crucial year where they could do something over Taiwan. By 2027, if all the countries like Europe, NATO, and America, if this so depleted, and including Ukraine, there's war fatigue is going on, right? If that happens, China can just look around and say, no one will bother us if we, invade or pressure
Taiwan.
on Taiwan, right? So that's a likely scenario, and so that's why I'm going to Taiwan to create awareness, because I saw in Ukraine what's happening. Why Ukraine is able to defend is the civil mobility, their sense of patriotism, at the public level, is so strong.
Do you think that there's you mentioned Ukraine, do you think there's a China solution that President Trump may consider? That there's a huge buzz that in the next 2 days, there'll be some sort of a proposal, peace proposal that Trump administration will come up with.
Now, you will never know, who are the key actors in this. China has a role if they want to play. India also has a role, because India has a very good relationship with Russia as well, right?
Yeah.
And then, Europe and Ukraine and America all should be involved.
Yeah.
But then I think China's interest is not to resolve the issue, but to prolong the war, to weaken everybody, right? So that will be their main interest. Also, if Ukraine issue is resolved, right, hopefully they get a fair deal, Ukraine get a fair deal. Then Russia will be kind of, if not aligning with West, more like a neutral zone, right?
Yes.
So they won't have the need for China as such. And I'm sure this is China's fear. That
But this looks like geopolitics 101, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if this is what it looks logical from a point of view, then other administrations, whether it's the U.S. administration or NATO, Europe, all of them would be very clear that what are really China's design. There's no peace proposal. It's fester the issue long enough for them to make gains, right? That's what their plan is. Which brings me to ask you, what do you think could be the long-term U.S.-China relationship under President Trump?
I think President Xi Jinping and Communist Party of China, they have stated very clearly, by 2049, when they celebrate 100th anniversary of founding of PRC, they want to be number one in the world. So America is already at number one. The choice with America is, do you want to be dethroned and replaced by China, or do you want to hold on to your position? So Xi Jinping and Communist Party of China has declared they want to be number one. So they already say that this world has two superpowers, and China is one. Initially, they used to say Asia can have two superpowers, right? Now they're saying world can have two superpowers. By 2049, they want to be numero uno, right? So that's why it is for America to decide. But then there is a consensus, both on Republican and Democratic side, that America wants to remain number one for various reasons, partly because, it's a rule-based international system that they have provided, and the democratic system that they, practice and advocate, Of course, there are a lot of criticisms against that as well. So based on that, America wants to remain number one. You are at Harvard now, so at the Kennedy School, the former dean, right, who has come out with a book called Thucydides' Trap, in which, he has studied 2,000 years of, great power rivalry in politics. So 16 out of 16, whenever there was one power, other power tried to replace it. Out of 16 times, 12 times were replaced through war. So based on historical precedent, there is 75% chances that this great power politics between America and China will be decided through war. 75% chances, right? The last one, the Britain, gave their power to America, So if you exclude that, then the percentage increases to more than 80+%. So that's how they decide, So we are in this great power rivalry, great power politics, and everybody are calculating, and putting their stakes together. So China is trying to put Russia in their fold. If Ukraine issue is resolved,
then Russia will not need China in the same way.
So that's how you see it. So that's why the defense secretary, when he went to Europe recently, essentially said, why
he
we
said
want
that
to.
Ukraine will not be in NATO. He said that very clearly.
But that is is in headlines. But what he said was, we will withdraw.
To pre-2014.
We will withdraw from, Europe and NATO, including Ukraine, to resolve it, because we want all our arsenal to focus on China. So that's what Rubio also says, right? So that is less being emphasized, So America is not withdrawing from NATO just to be, just to be an isolationist, but they're saying we need all the arsenals that we have
to focus on our primary competitor
or rivalry, that's China. So, as a follower of His Holiness Dalai Lama, we don't want war. We believe in nonviolence, right? But then, if you look at history, great power rivalry is a reality, So we are living in a very uncertain times.
Indeed, and no one better to dissect that than yourself. Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV. And let's see now what will be the theatre of war, which is going to be traditional war, or is it going to be trade and technology, which could really be the new frontiers of war between US and China. Thank you so much, sir.
So coming years and decade will be
interesting to watch out.
Not just interesting, might be dangerous too, We don't want to see it that way, but it might be, what our future generation is going to see. So I'm glad you made it to Harvard, and
Thank you so much,
good to see you in person.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.